The internet has no single centralized governance in either technological implementation or policies for access and usage. Each constituent network sets its own policies. The overreaching definition of the two principal namespaces in the internet, the Internet Protocol address, which is commonly known as the IP address, the space and domain name system or the DNS, are directed by a maintainer organization, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, or ICANN or ICANN. The technical underpinning and standardization of the core protocols is an activity of the Internet Engineering Task Force or IETF. The IETF is a non-profit organization of loosely affiliated international participants that anyone may associate with by contributing technical expertise. In November 2006, the internet was included on USA Today's list of New 7 Wonders.
This is you, this is your computer, and this is you watching What is an IP address? IP addresses represent where you live on the internet and are needed to send messages to computers outside of your own network. Imagine when you send a letter to your great aunt Mew. You put her address on the front of the envelope and the return address on the back. You send the message and expect to get a reply. This is what is going on with your computer right now as you're watching this, except the destination address of the thousands of messages you're sending every minute is some YouTube server, and the return or source address is the computer in front of you. Just like with house addresses, you won't find two computers connected to the internet with the same address. Somewhat differently though, computers don't use geographical addresses but rather use a string of numbers called an IP address. These IP addresses are how the devices involved in passing the message know who is sending what to whom. Not including a source IP when sending a message over the internet would be like sending a letter with no return address to a complete stranger who has to deal with billions of letters every minute and expect to get a reply. Yeah, good luck with that. So, quick recap. IP addresses are unique series of numbers which identify computers on the internet. Want to watch YouTube? You need an IP address. Want to send an email? You need an IP address. Want to browse GIFs of adorable cats? You need an IP address. Cool. Moving swiftly on. If you look at an IP address in a bit more detail, you'll notice that it's basically four numbers separated by dots. This particular IP address would be pronounced 192.168.1.1. Using dot or point between the numbers doesn't really matter, it's just personal preference. As mentioned in a previous video, sending information across the network will eventually lead to ones and zeros being transmitted in the form of electrical signals. An IP address has 32 of these ones and zeros. With a little bit of arithmetic, we can work out that there are 4,294,967,296 addresses available for use on the internet. Wait, hang on. There are 7 billion people in the world, about 3 billion of whom are connected to the internet. Some of these people will have multiple internet-connected devices, the number of which is going up literally every second. Aren't we running out of addresses? Why yes, we most certainly are. The super amazing techie people realized this problem back in the late 1990s and hence came up with a system to slow down the rate at which IP addresses were being used up. That is called NAT. Imagine a postman standing at your front door. Looking towards the house is like looking at the devices on your home network, and looking out towards the road is like looking out towards the internet. The postman takes 3 letters, one from Alex watching YouTube, one from David sending an email, and one from Jane watching GIFs of adorable cats. The postman sends off these letters and any replies get given to him. He then comes back to the house with the replies and gives them to Alex, David and Jane respectively. Same idea with NAT. It takes multiple addresses from inside your network and presents a single IP address pointing out towards the internet, thus reducing the number of IP addresses used. This is why if you take a look at your network settings at your house and then ask a friend to do the same at theirs, it's likely you'll have incredibly similar IP addresses. NAT is working in the background. And so, this is you, this is your computer, and this is you finishing What is an IP address?
Welcome katropa. In this video, tatlo po yung pag-uusapan natin. Una, ano ba ang IP address? Pangalawa, paano po natin malaman or makuha yung IP address ng mga devices po natin sa ating network? Number 3, paano naman po natin palitan yung IP address ng mga devices po natin from dynamic to static? So ano ba ang IP address? IP stands for Internet Protocol. So Internet Protocol address. It is a logical address. Meaning to say, it can be changed, it can be removed, and it can be reassigned. So sino-sino naman po ang pwedeng magpalit, mag-remove, at mag-reassign ng IP address? So, pwede pong tayo, mga users, pwede din pong network administrators, especially sa malalaking networks, and it can also be automatically done by the routers. Siyempre with the built-in DHCP server features or the dynamic host configuration protocol. Now let's move on sa four types of IP address. So number one is dynamic IP address. So ano naman itong dynamic IP address? Ito po yung IP address na nagbago-bago from time to time. Usually, yung si router po yung nag-assign dynamic IP address. So kung makikita po niyo sa inyong phone na naka-DHCP po yan or sa inyong PC na naka-obtain IP address, then you are using a dynamic IP address. Number two, static IP address. So ano naman ang static IP address? In contrast po sa dynamic, ang static po ay hindi po siya nagbago-bago. So permanent IP address. Usually yung nag-set po nito, na-set po ito manually ng users or ng network administrator. So kung sa smartphone po ninyo ay nakaset po yung static or sa PC po nyo nakaset po yung use the following IP address, then you are using a static IP address. Number three is public IP address. So ano naman tong public IP address? The best example po ng public IP address is yun po yung binigay sa atin ng ISP po natin. Every CPE or Customer Premises Equipment na binigay po ng ISP po sa atin, PLDT man yan, Globe, Converge, meron po talaga silang binigay na public IP address, which na makikita po natin sa WAN or yung WAN IP, yan po yung public IP address po natin. That is useful to access the WAN or the wide area network or the internet and vice versa. So po from internet to your home network, pwede din po yan using with the help of public IP address. The other good example ng public IP address is the websites. Like for example, Shopee.com or Facebook.com. So gumagamit lang po sila ng domain name. But in reality, yung ina-access po natin dyan is public IP address. Let me show you how. So kung ipiping po natin yung Shopee.com, makikita po natin na hindi po Shopee.com yung na-ping, kundi yung public IP address. At kapag kinakopy po natin yan at nilagay natin sa web address bar, we will be redirected to Shopee.com. At ganun din po sa Facebook.com. Now, the last but not the least is the private IP address. So, ano naman ang private IP address? Ito po yung ginagamit po natin sa ating LAN or local area network na usually Class C IP address na nag-start po sa 192.172 at 10 sa mga piso Wi-Fi vendor dyan. So, since na-mention ko po yung Class C IP address mga katropa, let's move on sa IP classes. Actually, meron pong 5 classes ang IP address. A, B, C, D, and E. Pero since naka-reserve na po yung D at E, magfo-focus na lang po tayo sa top 3 classes ng IP address. So to start with, ito po yung Class A. It can support up to 16 million hosts or devices. Ito naman po yung Class B. It can support up to 65,000 hosts or devices. At ito naman po yung Class C. It can support up to 254 hosts or devices. Meron pong dalawang versions ang IP address, the IPv4 and the IPv6. IPv4 or Internet Protocol version 4 is a 32 bits IP address that can accommodate up to 4.7 billion hosts or devices. The IPv6 naman or Internet Protocol version 6 is 128 bits IP address that can accommodate up to 340 undecillion hosts or devices. That is trillions of devices. This is a self-help tech guide, so help yourself by not skipping any part of this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Ngayon, paano naman po natin kunin ang IP address ng devices po natin sa ating network? So if you are using PC, all you have to do mga katropa is to press the Windows logo plus R for the run command. And then sa run command, type po natin yung CMD, then hit OK, click OK or hit enter. Then sa command prompt po, type po natin yung ipconfig. Then hit enter. So yung nakikita po ninyong IPv4 mga katropa, that is the IP address ng iyong device. And yung default gateway naman po is yung IP address ng iyong router. If you are using phone naman mga katropa, all you have to do, I suggest, is to download and install the ipconfig app. Then, open pa natin yung ipconfig app. Same lang din yung makita pa natin. Yung IP address is the IP address po ng iyong device. At yung default gateway or yung gateway is the IP address of your router. Paano naman po natin i-change yung IP address ng mga devices po natin from dynamic to static? So if you're using a Windows PC, all you have to do mga katropa is to press the Windows logo plus R for the run command, and then type po ninyo yung control space panel. Click OK or hit enter. Then punta po tayo sa network and internet, sa network and sharing center, then dito sa change adapter setting. Yung Ethernet, right click lang po natin yan, then click po natin yung properties, then hanapin po natin yung IPv4, click properties. Then, from obtain, check nyo po yung use the following IP address. So, type po ninyo yung IP address na gusto po ninyo. Then, click kita button. Then, yung default gateway which is the IP address po ninyong router. Then, type nyo lang po yung gusto po ninyong DNS. Then, click OK to save the changes. Paano naman po palitan yung IP address ng ating mobile phone from dynamic to static? So, all you have to do mga katrapas, punta po tayo sa settings, then sa Wi-Fi, then forget muna natin yung ating Wi-Fi, then open natin ulit, then open natin click natin tong advanced option. Then palitan natin yung DHCP to static, then sa IP address type po natin yung IP address na gusto po natin, dapat sa same subnet lang po sa ating network. Same subnet lang po ng ating network. Then yung gateway is yung IP address po ng ating router. Then sa DNS, kahit 4 na 8 lang, ayos na yan. Or 4 na. Then, type po natin yung password ng ating Wi-Fi. Then, connect. So, that's it. Ganun lang kadali mga katropa, palitan yung IP address ng ating smartphone or phone or mobile phone from dynamic to static. Did you learn something? Get this video a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe for more. I'm also happy to see your comments.
The Internet's terminology. The word interneted was used as early as 1849, meaning interconnected or interwoven. The word internet was used in 1974 as the shorthand form of internetwork. Today, the term internet most commonly refers to the global system of interconnected computer networks, though it may also refer to any group of smaller networks. Now, when it came into common use, most publications treated the word internet as a capitalized proper noun. This has become less common. This reflects the tendency in English to capitalize new terms and move to lowercase as they became familiar. Now, the word is sometimes still capitalized to distinguish the global internet from smaller networks. Though many publications, including the AP style book since 2016, recommend the lowercase form in every case. In 2016, the Oxford English Dictionary found that based on a study of around 2.5 billion printed and online sources, internet was capitalized in 54% of cases. Now, the terms internet and World Wide Web are often used interchangeably. It is common to speak of going on the internet when using a web browser to view web pages. However, the World Wide Web or the World Wide Web or WWW or the web is the only one of a large number of internet services. Now, a collection of document or web pages and other web resources that are being linked by hyperlinks and URLs.
This episode of Life Noggin was brought to you by Audible. Hey there, welcome to Life Noggin. Thanks to this wonderful thing called the internet, you are watching this video right now. But how did the internet get to where it is today? There is so much internet history that we couldn't possibly get to everything in this short of a video, so we're definitely gonna have to make a second one. Anyway, let's get started. The internet actually got its start over 50 years ago, and computers back then filled up entire rooms. Scientists and researchers used it for years to communicate during the Cold War. It was useful because if one computer went down, the others wouldn't follow. In 1962, a scientist named J.C.R. Licklider proposed the idea of a network of computers that could talk to one another. In 1969, the first ever message was sent from one computer to another over the ARPANET, the government's computer network at the time. ARPANET stands for Advanced Research Projects Agency. One was located in a research lab in UCLA and the other at Stanford. All the message said was log in, and it didn't fail to crash the network. Stanford only received the first 2 letters of the message, but hey, you gotta start somewhere. By the end of the year, only 4 computers were connected to this network. In 1971, the University of Hawaii's Aloha Net was added, followed by various networks in London and Norway 2 years later. Also happening in 1971, Ray Tomlinson was developing the first system to send mail back and forth between the users of ARPANET. This would eventually be called electronic mail or email for short. The @ symbol was used to tell a person's name and the host name apart. With all of the networks floating around, there needed to be a way for all of the computers on them to communicate with other networks. This is where computer scientist named Vinton Cerf comes in. He invented a way to introduce computers across the globe to each other in a virtual space. This invention was called Transmission Control Protocol, or TCP, which was followed by Internet Protocol, or IP. In the 80s, scientists used Cerf's protocol to send data back and forth, but the 90s is where it really all began. In 1991, a computer programmer named Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web. This wasn't just a data sharing space for scientists anymore, this was an entire network of information that was accessible to anyone with an internet connection. Now, you're using a browser right now to watch this video, and some of the popular ones are Firefox, Google Chrome, and Safari, but in 1992, Urwise was created. Urwise was an internet browser and the first to have a graphical interface. A few browsers came before and after, but in 1993, Mosaic was created, and it would popularize surfing the web. Mosaic influenced many of the browsers to follow, including Netscape Navigator in 1994. This became the most popular web browser at the time, accounting for 90% of the web usage in 1995. In the early 90s, companies like AOL and CompuServe were starting to provide dial-up internet access. Dial-up is a method of connecting to the internet via a telephone line. Your telephone line was plugged into a modem and the other end was plugged into the phone jack. There was a period in history where you couldn't use your telephone and the internet at the same time. Without the internet, we obviously wouldn't have things like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, but way more importantly, we wouldn't be able to access information in seconds. We wouldn't be able to communicate with people from around the world, share ideas, and educate those who might not get a chance elsewhere. Also, without the internet, I'd actually have to talk to someone when I order a pizza, which, by the way, was the first thing ever purchased on the internet. How would your life be different without the internet? Let us know in the comment section below. This episode of Life Noggin is brought to you by Audible. Go to audible.com/lifenoggin to get a 30-day free trial and 1 free audiobook download of your choice. If you want to learn even more about the internet, we recommend this amazing book, Tubes, A Journey to the Center of the Internet. Make sure you come back every Monday for a brand new video. And if you want even more Life Noggin, check out these other episodes and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Links are below. I'm Blocko. This has been Life Noggin. Don't forget to keep on thinking.
In the 1960s, the Advanced Research Project Agency or ARPA of the United States Department of Defense funded research into time sharing of computers. Research into packet switching, which is one of the fundamental internet technologies, started in the work of Paul Baran in the early 1960s and independently by Donald Davis in 1965. After the Symposium on Operating Systems Principle in 1967, packet switching from the proposed NPL network was incorporated into the design for the ARPANET and other resource sharing networks such as the Merit Network and Cyclades, which were developed in the late 1960s and early 1970s. ARPANET development began with two network nodes which were interconnected between the Network Measurement Center at the University of California, Los Angeles or UCLA, Henry Samueli School of Engineering and Applied Science directed by Leonard Glenrock, and the NLS system at SRI International by Douglas Engelbart in Menlo Park, California on October 29, 1969. The third site was the Culler-Fried Interactive Mathematics Center at the University of California, Santa Barbara, followed by the University of Utah Graphics Department. Now, in a sign of future growth, 15 sites were connected to the young ARPANET by the end of 1971. These early years were documented in the 1972 film Computer Networks, The Herald of Resource Sharing. Early international collaboration for the ARPANET were rare. Connections were made in 1973 to the Norwegian Seismic Array or NORSAR via a satellite station in Tanum, Sweden, and to Peter Kirsten's research group at the University College London, which provided a gateway to British academic networks. The ARPA projects and international working groups led to the development of various protocols and standards by which multiple separate networks could become a single network or a network of networks. In 1974, Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn used the term Internet as a shorthand for Internetwork in RFC 675, and later RFCs repeated this use. Cerf and Kahn credit Louis Poussin with important influences on TCP/IP design. Commercial PTT providers were connected with developing the X.25 public data networks. Access to the ARPANET was expanded in 1981 when the National Science Foundation or NSF funded the Computer Science Network or CSNet. In 1982, the International Protocol Suite or TCP/IP was standardized, which permitted worldwide proliferation of interconnected networks. TCP/IP network access expanded again in 1986 when the National Science Foundation Network or NSF-NET provided access to supercomputer sites in the United States for researchers. First at a speed of 56 kilobit per second and later at 1.5 megabits per second and 45 megabits per second. The NSF-NET expanded into academic and research organization in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and Japan in 1988 to 1989. Although other network protocols such as the UUCP had global reach well before this time, this marked the beginning of the Internet as an international network. Commercial Internet Service Providers or ISP emerged in 1989. Again, the Commercial Internet Service Providers or ISP emerged in 1989 in the United States and Australia. The ARPANET was decommissioned in 1990. Steady advances in semiconductor technology and optical networking created new economic opportunities for commercial involvement in the expansion of the network in its core and for delivering services to the public. In mid-1989, MCI Mail and CompuServe established connections to the Internet. delivering email and public access products to the 500,000 users of the internet. Just months later, on January 1, 1990, PSINet launched an alternate internet backbone for commercial use, one of the networks that added to the core of the commercial internet of later years. In March 1990, the first high-speed or Tier 1, which is at a speed of 1.5 megabit per second, link between the NSF net and Europe was installed between Cornell University and CERN, allowing much more robust communication than were capable with satellites. 6 months later, Tim Berners-Lee would begin writing the World Wide Web, which is the first web browser after 2 years of lobbying CERN management. By Christmas 1990, Berners-Lee had built all the tools necessary for a working web: the hypertext transfer protocol, the hypertext markup language, and the first web browser. The first web servers was already being developed during those time also. Now, in 1991, the Commercial Internet Exchange was founded, allowing the PSINet to communicate with the other commercial networks, SurfNet and Alternet. Stanford Federal Credit Union was the first financial institution to offer online internet banking services to all its members in October 1994. In 1996, OP Financial Group, also a cooperative bank, became the second online bank in the world and the first in Europe. By 1995, the internet was fully commercialized in the US when the NSF net was decommissioned, removing the last restriction on the use of the internet to carry commercial traffic. As technology advanced and commercial opportunities fueled reciprocal growth, the volume of internet traffic started experiencing similar characteristics as that of the scaling of the MOS transistors, exemplified by Moore's law doubling every 18 months. Now, this growth, formalized as Edholm's law, was catalyzed by advances in MOS technology, laser light wave systems, and noise performance. Since 1995, the internet has tremendously impacted culture and commercial, including the rise of the near-instant communication by email, instant messaging, telephony, two-way interactive video calls, and the World Wide Web, with its discussion forums, blogs, social networking services, and online shopping sites. Increasing the amount of data are transmitted at higher and higher speeds over fiber optic networks operating at 1 gigabyte, 10 gigabyte, or more. The internet continues to grow, that is being driven by the internet. Again, the internet continues to grow, driven by ever greater amounts of online information and knowledge, commerce, entertainment, and social networking services. During the late 1990s, it was estimated that traffic on the public internet grew by 100% per year, while the mean annual growth in the number of internet users was thought to be between 20% and 50%. This growth is often attributed to the lack of central administration, which allows organic growth of the network, as well as the non-proprietary nature of the internet protocols, which encourages vendor interoperability and prevents any one company from exerting too much control over the network. Now, as of March 2011, the estimated total number of internet users was 2.95 billion, which is equivalent to 30.2% of the world population. Now, it is estimated that in 1993, the internet carried only 1% of the information flowing through two-way telecommunication. Again, it is estimated that in 1993, the internet carried only 1% of the information flowing through two-way telecommunication. By the year 2000, this figure had grown to 51%, and by the year 2007, more than 97%. Again, by 2000, this figure had grown to 51%, and by 2007, more than 97% of all telecommunicated information was carried over the internet.
Di may pagkakailang, binago ng internet ang buhay ng sangkatauhan. Ito ang isa sa magandang kagamitan na naimbento ng tao sa makabagong panahon. Paano ba ito gumagana? Sino ang nagmamay-ari nito? Sino ang mga taong responsable sa pagpapagana nito? Ngayong araw, suriin natin ang iba't ibang bagay tungkol sa internet at ang mga organisasyon sa likod nito, ang kasalukuyan at ang hinaharap nito. Ang revolusyon nito ay nagsimula noong 1969. Noong panahon na yun, ang US State Department ay may sangay na tinatawag na ARPA. Dito nanggaling ang karamihan sa na-develop na teknolohiya sa internet communication sa ngayon. Noong una, gumagamit sila ng magkakaibang computer terminal para makapag-communicate sa isa't isa. Dito natin makikilala si Robert Taylor. Siya ang direktor ng Information Processing Techniques Office, parte ng ARPA. Siya ang nagpanukala na kailangan ng opisina nila ang single computer network para mabilis ang trabaho nila. Pinabura naman ito ng mga bossing niya at noon din ay nilunsad nila ito na naging dahilan ng pagkakatatag ng ninuno ng internet, ang ARPANET. Pagkalipas ng mga panahon, lumago ang ARPANET. Lumipas ang 20 taon, isang computer scientist na nagngangalang Sir Tim Berners-Lee ay nagtatrabaho sa CERN, isang malaking physics laboratory sa Geneva. Dito, napansin niya, hirap ang mga tao sa pagsishare ng impormasyon sa computer dahil kailangan mo pang mag-login sa ibang computer para makuha mo ang kailangan mo. Dito, nakaisip siya ng paraan at naimbento niya ang World Wide Web noong 1989, and the rest is history, ika nga. Ang internet ay ang infrastructure ng network at ang World Wide Web ay ang daan para makakuha ka ng impormasyon sa internet. Pinadali ni Berners-Lee ang paggamit ng internet dahil ginawa niya itong uniform at madaling magamit. Ngayon, ang internet ay malawakan ng ginagamit sa buong mundo. Alam niyo mga kapatid, mahirap ang proseso kung paano nakakarating sa atin ang internet. Hindi ito kasing dali ng inaakala natin. Ang mga cable wires ay nilalatag nila sa mga karagatan, patawid sa iba't ibang bansa. Ito hindi na bago dahil naglalatag na ng mga cable wires ang mga bansa way back 1854. Ito ang transatlantic telegram cable. Ginamit nila ito sa telegraph communication. Ang kabling ginagamit sa internet cable ay binubuo ng optical fiber na nakabalot sa makakapal na mga materyales para sa proteksyon nito. Sa pangkalahatan, umabot na sa 420 na mga cable ang nakalatag sa ating mga karagatan na may habang 1.1 million kilometer as of 2017. Paano ba nila ito ginagawa? Ang mga submarine cable kung tawagin dahil ito ay nakalubog sa tubig ay binabaon sa ilalim ng karagatan gamit ang mga espesyal na mga barko na nagdadala ng submarine cable at dahan-dahang inilalatag ito sa seabed ng ating mga karagatan. May mga pagkakataon na nadadamage ito gaya ng nangyari noong 2008 kung saan 60% ng India at 70% ng internet ng Egypt ay nawala. Ang dahilan umano ay ang mga angkor ng barko na basta na lamang inilubog sa dagat at natamaan nito ang mga submarine internet cable sa karagatan. Sa mga ganitong pagkakataon, nare-repair naman agad gamit ang mga repair vessel na nakatalaga dito. Sa pangkalahatan, imposibleng tuluyang maputol ang internet connection, lalo sa panahon ngayon, dahil sa mga satellite na nag-orbit sa ating planeta na nagbibim ng internet signal sa ating mundo, at patuloy itong lumalaki sa pagdaan ng panahon. So, sino bang nagmamay-ari ng internet? Technically, ay wala. Ang internet ay autonomous interconnection, kumbaga walang bansa o sino man ang namamahala dito. Subalit, ang gobyerno ng iba't ibang bansa ay may kakayahang limitahan o kontrolin ang paggamit ng mamamayan dito depende sa batas ng bawat bansa. Gaya sa China, pinagbabawal sa mga mamamayan dito ang pag-access sa YouTube. Noong 2016, ang US government ay binigay ang pamamahala ng IANA o Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, ang database na kinalalagyan ng lahat ng mga Internet Domain Names sa ICANN o Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. Mga kapatid, ang Internet Domain Names ay may halintulad sa isang phone book sa mga CP natin. Ang ICANN ay isang independent at isang non-profit organization na nabuo noong 1998. Ito ay binubuo ng mga professional organization at mga scientific body. Anong responsibilidad ng ICANN? Well, silang nagpapanatili sa seguridad ng internet at namamahala para magamit ito ng lahat. Sa kabilang banda, wala silang kontrol kung anong content ang lumalabas sa internet. Sa makatuwid, hindi nila nare-regulate ang internet access o para makatulong mapahinto ang ilang mga bagay gaya ng spam. Subalit, napananatili nilang safe ang web sa pagdevelop at pagpapatupad ng mga policy sa internet. Halimbawa, gaya ng mga unique na identifiers. Ang mga unique identifiers na ito mga kapatid ay ang mga web address na tinatype natin. Example, nagtype ka ng youtube.com. Ang response na iyong matatanggap ay galing sa totoong site ng YouTube, hindi sa mga fake site or scam. Ang ICANN ang tumutulong upang i-coordinate ang mga unique identifiers na iyong inilagay. Kung wala ang ICANN, hindi tayo magkakaroon ng pandaigdigang internet. Kumbaga sila ang watchman ng internet para masiguro ang safety at kahusayan nito. Ang ICANN ay isa lamang sa mga organisasyong nagpapatakbo sa internet. Meron pang mga iba gaya ng Internet Engineering Task Force. Mga ganitong organisasyon ang gumagawa ng mga standard at protocol at sinisiguro nila na safe ang internet at bukas para sa lahat. Ang internet ay makapangyarihang bagay na kaya tayong impluwensyahan. Subalit, dapat natin itong gamitin ng tama at huwag itong gamitin sa maling paraan o ikabubuti ng ilan lamang. Ano nga bang kinabukasan ng internet? Sa panahon ngayon, ipinakilala na ang 5G o 5th Generation Mobile Network na nangangako ng mas mabilis na internet connection. Subalit may mga kumikustyon kung ligtas nga ba itong gamitin. Sa bandang huli, tayo pa rin ang masusunod at magiging responsable sa kalalabasan ng ating mga aksyon. Ikaw kaibigan, ano sa palagay mo? Paano nga ba nakakatulong ang internet sa ating pang-araw-araw na buhay? Paki-comment lamang po sa ating comment section at huwag nyo rin pong kalimutang mag-subscribe at i-click ang notification bell para updated pa rin po tayo sa marami pa nating mga video. Maraming salamat po.
Minsan ba, naisip mo kung sino ang nakaimbento ng internet? Aminin mo man o hindi, isa ka siguro sa mga taong lubos na nakinabang sa internet at marahil yumaman na rin sa paggamit ng internet sa pamamagitan ng pag-o-online selling. Tiyak ko na magugulat ka sa iyong mga malalaman sa kung papaano ba talaga nag-umpisa na gamitin at kung kailan ito tuluyang na-develop sa paglipas ng panahon. Ano ba ang internet? At sino ang nakaimbento nito? Ang internet ay isang malawak na network na nagkokonekta sa mga computer sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo. Sa pamamagitan ng internet, ay malayang magbigayan ng mga impormasyon ang mga tao at nagagawang mag-communicate ng mga ito sa isa't isa, saan mang panig siya naruroon sa mundo. Isa sa mga sekreto sa pagkakabuo ng konsepto ng internet, ay mula sa mga malilikot na isip ng henyong si Nikola Tesla, nang ang ideya niya ng World Wireless System ay una niyang maisip noong 1900s. At nang sinimula ng mga taong ito na advance kung mag-isip na sina Vannevar Bush at Paul Otlet, ang konsepto ng pag-iipon ng mga talaan ng mga libro at mahahalagang impormasyon, na tinawag na searchable storage systems noong 1930s at 1940s. Subalit nang pinasikat ni Lee Clyder ang ideya ng intergalactic network ng mga computers noong 1960s, ay dito na nag-umpisa ang makabagong era ng internet. At hindi nagtagal, ang ilan sa mga scientist ay nagsimula naman makapag-develop ng sistema ng packet switching. Isang sistema na mabilis at epektibong paraan para makapagpadala ng mga electronic data kahit saan mang panig ng mundo. Na siyang magiging malaking dahilan sa pagkakabuo ng internet na alam natin ngayon. At ang unang prototype ng internet na ginamit noong 1960s ay gawa ng ARPANET o ng Advanced Research Projects Agency Network na orihinal na pinondohan ng US Department of National Defense. Ginamit ng ARPANET ang packet switching para hayaang mag-communicate ang mga computer sa iisang network. At noon ngang October 29, 1969, sinubukan ng ARPANET na magpadala ng kanilang kauna-unahang mensahe sa pamamagitan ng point-to-point na pagpapadala ng mensahe, mula sa isang computer, galing naman sa isa pang computer. Ipinadala ang mensahe sa isang computer na nakabase sa isang research lab ng UCLA, at ang isa pang computer ay naandoon naman sa Stanford. Ang unang mensahe ay ang salitang login. Isang maiksi at simpleng mensahe, ngunit sila ay nabigo dahil ang natanggap lamang ng computer na nasa Stanford ay ang unang dalawang letra ng mensaheng login. At ang teknolohiya sa larangan ng internet ay patuloy na lumago kaya sa pagsapit ng taong 1970s nang matapos na may develop ng mga computer scientist na sina Robert Kahn at Vinton Cerf ang Transmission Control Protocol at ang Internet Protocol o TCP at IP, na isang uri ng communication na nagtatakda ng paraan kung papaano maipapadala ang mga electronic data patungo sa magkakaibang networks. At hindi nagtagal, ito ay inadopt ng ARPANET noong January 1, 1983, at simula noon, ang mga researchers ng ARPANET ay nagsimula ng buuin ang mga network-to-network na komunikasyon na atin ang ginagamit sa ngayon. Ang online world ay mas lalo pang nakilala noong 1990 nang ang isang computer scientist na si Tim Berners-Lee ay naimbento ang World Wide Web habang siya ay nalilito sa paggamit ng internet. At mula noon, ay masasabi na, halos nabuo na ang mga mekanismo ng internet, at sa paglipas pa ng mga taon ay lalo pa itong naging popular at patuloy na tinangkilik ng publiko. Kasabay nito ang pag-usbong ng iba't ibang uri ng social media na lalo pang nagpatingkad sa paggamit ng internet ng tao. Sinasabi na ang web talaga ang totoong dahilan kung bakit madali natin na-access ang mga data o impormasyon online dahil sa mga website at mga hyperlinks. Ang web ang naging daan upang mas lalo pang makilala ang internet na naa-access ng publiko ngayon, at ang nagsilbing susi upang mas lalong pang lumawak ang mga impormasyon na kailangan ng tao sa pang-araw-araw nitong buhay. Ang pagkakalikha ng internet sa mundo ay itinuturing na isang malaking hakbang patungo sa hinaharap. Subalit, hindi ito magiging posible kung wala ang mga taong patuloy na nagsikap at nagtiyaga para mabuo ang internet. Ikaw, gaano ba kahalaga sa iyo ang internet? Paki-comment mo na lang yan sa ibaba at sigurado akong babasahin ko yan. At kung hindi ka pa nakasubscribe sa aking channel ay hinihiling ko sa iyo kaibigan, na mag-subscribe ka na, at pindutin mo na rin ang notification bell icon para lagi kang mauuna sa tuwing maglalabas tayo ng panibagong video. Magkita-kita uli tayo sa susunod na video at maraming salamat sa inyong panunood. Muli, ito si Insurrectus TV. Signing off.